Don't worry, it's a game. It's a game just like usual.
You'll ruin your eyes playing so close to the TV.
What are you talking about?
Fucking clip it! Clip it!
I was part of the Army's Force 21 trials.
Force 21? That's about tactical IT deployment, right?
I give it to me, I'll give you AK. Yeah. Alright, I'm gonna go be with this.
Any field experience?
No, not really.
So this is your first.
I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Like what?
What experience do you have?
I've been playing airsoft for about 2 years now.
12 years.
4 years now. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan, spent a year in both places.
What games that involve shooting have you played?
I've played Mass Effect, Modern Warfare, Halo,
Black Ops.
Every major franchise from Battlefield, Call of Duty.
Sneaking Mission 60, Weapons 80, Advanced
VR, huh?
but realistic in every way. That's far more effective than live exercises.
You don't get injured in VR, do you? Every year, a few soldiers die at field exercises.
We are following some breaking news right now. 2 3rd ID soldiers died at Fort Stewart last night. Military officials say that the 2 soldiers were involved in a field training exercise. Their deaths caused by a vehicle accident.
There's pain sensation in VR and even a sense of reality and urgency. The only difference is it isn't actually happening.
That's the way they want you to think, to remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier?
Perfect show, LT. You called it, Sergeant. All stations. Assange down. Enemy KIA.
So you're saying that VR training is some kind of mind control?
Metal Gear Solid is a series with many deep themes and subjects, primarily based on the narrative of war and its devastating impacts on humanity. Its context of war, as far as my knowledge, goes beyond what most video games don't address, but rather don't express as well or just gloss over. Wars throughout history have been driven through ideologies, religion, and nations striving for power and global dominance and economics. It's one of humanity's greatest blunders, using technical innovations that don't benefit mankind but lead to destructive outcomes.
Even if I fled to the United States, I would once again find myself creating weapons of mass murder. In the end, it doesn't matter where I go. I am still a weapons scientist. To be honest with you, I'm tired. Every day I help create things that should never be used, things that should never have existed in the first place. Every day, without sleep, without a word of praise from others. And my creations do not even benefit mankind. They are merely the tools of politicians.
Great minds develop weapons for the military-industrial complex to show their might and strength to other nations. Great minds and scientists throughout history have been forced to, or have willingly worked to ensure that other countries don't impose their ideologies on their rulers and leaders that have them perform all kinds of different tasks. Take the nuclear bomb, primarily led by the United States during World War II through the Manhattan Project, a secret research and development effort. The project started in 1942 and culminated into the successful creation of nuclear weapons. Key figures involved in the development included J. Robert Oppenheimer, who is often referred to as the father of the atomic bomb.
We had turned to effect, in what proved to be a major way, the course of man's history. We had the pride of thinking we knew what was good for man. And I do think it has left a mark on many of those who were responsibly engaged. This is not the natural business of a scientist.
Along with scientists such as Enrico Fermi, Niels Bohr, and finally Leo Szilard. The initial intention behind the development of the nuclear bomb was largely driven by the fear that Nazi Germany might be working on a similar weapon. The United States, alongside the United Kingdom and Canada, sought to build atomic bombs before the Nazis could. The success of the Manhattan Project led to the creation of the first atomic bombs, which were then used in the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, marking the first and the only time nuclear weapons were used in warfare.
I'm such a fool. It's all my fault. The truth is, my grandfather was part of the Manhattan Project. He suffered with the guilt for the rest of his life. And my father, he was born on August 6th, 1945.
The day of the Hiroshima bomb. God's got a sense of humor, all right.
3 generations of Emmerich men.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Nuclear testings have happened all over the world. The first was the Trinity test taking place in July 16, 1945. The test was part of the Manhattan Project and was conducted at the Alamogordo bombing range in New Mexico. Interestingly, MGS5 showcases this with its Alamogordo monument on Mother Base, with the boss's name etched into the plaque. A shining example of one of mankind's destructive creations and the boss's will to unite the world from it.
Only when our children show the wisdom not to forge new spears. Only then will we be truly triumphant.
MGS5, a game that often shows the cycle of revenge and the endless conflicts and proxies of wars, as the boss has foretold. The boss herself amongst many in nuclear testing ground in Operation Buster Jangle in 1951 at the Nevada testing site, where she was exposed to radiation and rendered infertile amongst many other soldiers at Bikini and Wentake atolls. Even the Nevada test site itself is where Big Boss would suffer the same fate. The effects were seen in both military personnel, civilians and indigenous populations who were exposed to fallout. Nuclear test sites like those in Nevada released radioactive fallout over Utah, Arizona, affecting thousands of civilians. Many women in these regions experienced miscarriages and reproductive issues due to long-term exposure. Increased rates of leukemia, thyroid cancer, and birth defects were documented in affected communities. Soldiers and sailors were deliberately exposed to nuclear explosions to study the effects on combat troops, just like the characters within MGS. Many developed cancers, sterility, and genetic mutations, affecting their ability to have children. Metal Gear Solid highlights that war has become routine, acceptable, a norm that humanity is chained to. It's the constant cycle of repetition, truly a war without end.
It's no longer about nations, ideologies, or ethnicity. It's an endless series of proxy battles fought by mercenaries and machines. When the battlefield is under total control, war becomes routine.
But it often reminds us it's not something to be celebrated. The impacts are life-changing. War is simply not a video game. The scars remain from the horrific things these veterans witness, such as losing friends, seeing all kinds of atrocities. Even though they're brave and try to bury it, the memories can often resurface. Hard to ignore the voices, etched into their subconscious minds, always in fight or flight. Living a normal life for some become what's somewhat nearly impossible, as the system is often then not prepared to handle what they possibly couldn't understand. If you guys haven't seen the movie Brothers in 2009 starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire, who portrays a soldier suffering with immense PTSD, a commonality between soldiers, I really highly recommend that you check it out, as it showcases that some soldiers who come home from battle suffer with trying to reintegrate into society. And one of the most famous movies that you probably all heard of is Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro, who tries to integrate into a society full of everything that is wrong with a modern day world, set within the aftermath of the likes of the Vietnam War, where the world and society was definitely not prepared on how to handle soldiers returning home and how to help their mental health.
What happened between you and Jack?
After the big shell incident, he became unstable. Memories began to resurface from his childhood when he fought for Solidus in the Liberian Civil War. And in the midst of all of that, the baby we had together, it hadn't even been born yet. Jack slowly stopped coming home. And when he did, he'd be dead drunk, sometimes covered in cuts and bruises. Roy was worried. He was Jack's commanding officer. But Jack just avoided him.
I have always been alone. Always.
Medals are given along with valor, but minds are left broken. We see this in MGSV, set against the backdrop of the Cold War. Big Boss is awarded and praised, but he isn't proud of the concepts of war and its achievements. Medals and praise mean nothing when the truth of war is a destructive arena of competition.
That's when it finally hit me. Space exploration is nothing but another game in the power struggle between the US and the USSR. Politics, economics, the arms race, they're all just arenas for meaningless competition.
The context of this video is to show how the series highlights how people can become desensitized to what has become part of the human condition, driven by our nature of aggression and what makes us the most dangerous beings on this planet, with too much knowledge to potentially destroy the world, as MGS2 explains through its AI. Yet another creation of human innovation that is both potentially beneficial and destructive. Isn't it ironic as a human race that we can actually create something that can both benefit mankind as well as destroy ourselves? It's truly bizarre.
A single person has the potential to ruin the world.
And the age of digitized communication has given even more power to the individual. Too much power for an immature species.
That some of us can get lost in our video games and FPS shooters like Call of Duty and often really forget the reality that war isn't really as fun as it appears or is showcased, often that it may be depicted on our video games that we play. Metal Gear Solid 5's online functions, particularly known as FOBs or Forward Operating Bases, introduce an intriguing dynamic. And considering that this game is 10 years old, which is bizarre to say because with the themes of the game, it feels right to say it's been 9 years on ice. But it's fair to say that not many people play anymore compared to when it came out on PS3. On my server, nobody has nuclear weapons, which is quite telling. For those who may be unfamiliar or have forgotten, This is essentially where players create their own military nations in a competitive virtual space. Here players infiltrate each other's bases, extracting resources and soldiers, all while expanding and shaping a secondary mother base according to their own moral choices. Without delving too deeply into the mechanics, every decision in the FOB system is critical to your offshore nation's survival. And from my personal experience, I always felt a neutral approach always seemed far more rewarding than the pursuit of nuclear weapons or trying to make enemies. While nukes in MGS5 serve as a deterrent, preventing players with low heroism from invading your base, that's really about all they do. There are no consequences beyond that. If a player successfully infiltrates your base, they aren't actually going to be able to launch your own nukes against you, and vice versa.
And use it as a deterrent, or dispose of it. What do you think, boss?
About all you can do is steal resources and kidnap soldiers. You can't really do anything about the nuclear weapons apart from disarm them or wait till a player decides to try and infiltrate your base to take them from you. Your entire operation isn't left in ruins, forcing you to start over or re-establish your base. It becomes clear that Kojima and Konami intended for nuclear disarmament to be achieved. In fact, Kojima himself has stated the infamous nuke disarmament cutscene is the true ending of MGS5. The scene was programmed to trigger only once, and the online community collectively disarmed a certain number of nuclear weapons to activate it. And when the cutscene was finally revealed to players after years of speculation, it was confirmed what many had suspected. This was the message that MGS5 had been leading toward all along. Some people still believe there's more to uncover, but after 10 years that seems unlikely. The event was the cutscene. The scene itself was data mined long before any of the regional servers met the disarmament conditions, whenever legitimately or not. No other hidden cutscenes depict a nuclear-equipped Venom Snake using these weapons, and in fact the game continually reinforces the opposite. A world without nukes is the only viable path, but that doesn't stop people from building them. The message is unmistakable. Humanity must strive to leave behind something better for future generations. Although with that being said, there is one particular cutscene that was showcased in contrast to nukes being disarmed, where in fact Venom Snake and the player did become nuclear equipped, if that's what the most chosen outcome would have been.
Our fear of nuclear arms drove us to bear them ourselves. We thought deterrence would be our defense. These weapons are costing us our future. A future we sold to ease the pain of the present.
And nuclear disarmament is an undeniable step towards that future. Personally, I don't believe there's anything more to be discovered within the FOB system. Its message is symbiotic. Even Miller himself states in one of the cutscenes, if someone tries to build another nuke, we'll be there to shut them down. A direct nod to the player-driven effort that outpaced those hoarding nuclear weapons. In a way, this was its own social experiment. One that mirrors the S3 plan in Metal Gear Solid 2. And what did it prove? The majority of players, much like the real world, ultimately agree the world would be better off without nukes.
No nuclear program will go unseen. Someone manages to build another nuke, we'll be there to shut him down. Gotta love the irony.
I haven't forgotten what you told me, boss. We have no tomorrow. But there's still hope for the future.
2018, the infamous nuclear disarmament cutscene was seemingly unlocked for PC players, but Konami quickly dismissed this as an error. Still, speculation grew. Was this truly a mistake, or had someone somewhere triggered the event prematurely? The most notable campaign to rid the game of nukes came years later at the height of the pandemic, when a user named Hung Horse led the anti-nuke gang. Players targeted the PS3 version of the game, chosen because it had the lowest number of active nukes, determined to finally force the event into reality, and it seemed like they had succeeded. The cutscene played, but months later, Konami intervened, declaring the entire operation a legitimate thing. Why? Because the anti-nuke gang was nothing more than a front. Behind the scenes, the group had discovered that reaching 0 nukes was an impossible task, so they brought in a hacker named Stefferp to finish the job. The problem? Some nukes could never be dismantled. Hung Horse later revealed to Did You Know Gaming that their campaign ran into what could only be described as an invincible set of nukes, or nuclear weapons, that did not belong to any base or player. Normally in MGS5 FOB systems, every nuke is attached to an FOB once it is built, but these weren't. They simply existed, untouchable and impossible to remove. The group called them Phantom Nukes. Realising they had reached an impasse, Stefferp created a bot to forcibly erase all nukes and trigger the cutscene. But before long, Konami caught wind of the operation and swiftly banned him, shutting down the effort entirely. And so after all these years, the question remains, was this all just a marketing ploy to keep players engaged with MGS5 long after its launch, or was it something deeper, a deliberate statement on the futility of modern warfare? After all, Kojima's stance against nuclear weapons has been a defining theme throughout the Metal Gear series.
Someday the world will no longer need us. No need for the gun, or the hand to pull the trigger. I have to drive out this demon inside me. Build a better future.
It's in MGS2 we come to the understanding that the lead protagonist, Raiden, is an example of this. A desensitized subject, a tool of war. Aside from his past as a child soldier, forced to commit all kinds of atrocities, as we know, children are more susceptible to being influenced by adults. All of which made him a suitable subject for conflict in the Patriots' eyes to carry out their agenda.
And kids are cruel. All people are by nature. They just lose touch with it as they get older. Start thinking they know right and wrong. That's immoral. War crime this, code of conduct that. Kids, you can mold, manipulate into performing all kinds of atrocities. And there's nothing like a good atrocity to keep a war going.
You disappeared from the relief center. I wondered what happened to you. I should have known they would recruit you.
Raiden was pre-prepped before he even did his mission in the Big Shell, to get him ready for what the Patriots had in store and had planned, which was the ultimate S3 plan, to control the public's perception.
The S3 is a system for controlling human will and consciousness. S3 is not you, a soldier trained in the image of Solid Snake. It is a method, a protocol that created a circumstance that made you what you are.
MGS2's themes on the digital age further demonstrate this. Raiden undergoes VR training and talks about it as if it's just a bit of harmless fun, just like we do when we play video games. Even noting he feels like some kind of a legendary mercenary, happily taking on the mantle of Solid Snake, who, just like his father, bears the same resemblance. Big Boss had plenty of fabricated stories branding him as a hero, a villain, a war icon, and something to be admired.
Zero elevated Big Boss, the hero who saved the world, to the status of an idol. The truth behind Big Boss became riddled with exaggeration, misrepresentation, and outright lies. Zero disseminated these stories among the masses and gathered the rich and powerful to his banner.
Solid Snake, a tool of war himself, doesn't embrace his role in the world. It's just a part of him, like many other soldiers who return to war because they find no other purpose, and it's showcased through Grey Fox and some of the cyborg soldiers in the likes of Metal Gear Rising. That sometimes people go back to what they know, and that they have no choice but to join war, that it becomes a part of their lifestyle, but the emotional impacts stay with them forever.
All the others remember what they were and pay for it daily.
Raiden explains the advanced VR systems that mimic different mission kinds, a form of image training that comes with sensations, a sense of urgency and reality. But as Snake explains to Raiden, or rather us the audience, whilst you don't get hurt in VR, that's what they want you to think, to remove you from the fear and true nature of war. And war as a video game, what better way to raise a soldier? MGS2 showcases generations of young kids who might be playing war video games, spending countless hours playing online with their friends, upgrading their guns, buying skins, and getting kill streaks.
See. Sure, it's Zone A.
Whenever it's a third-person shooter or first-person, they often don't warn or at least advise against such violent video games and the actual true reality of war. The MGS series, while just as violent as any other, actively tells the audience the dangers of war. Is it something we should be proud of or awarded for? Snake doesn't see himself as a hero as many others do, who may see war as a heroic act.
You guys were real heroes.
There are no heroes in war. All the heroes I know are either dead or in prison, one or the other.
But Snake, you're a hero, aren't you?
I'm just a man who's good at what he does, killing. This isn't a training exercise. Our lives are riding on this. There are no heroes or heroines. If you lose, you're worm food.
Yeah. Snake, you're a legend, and that's why I need to ask you this.
Legend? A legend is nothing but fiction. Someone tells it, someone else remembers. Everybody passes it on.
I'm here because I was assigned to this mission, not because I want to.
I'm no hero. Never was. I'm just an old killer, hired to do some wet work.
But even with that all being said, the reasons behind wars can be in many forms. That in fact war is a means to an end. If it is to be fought, are we fighting for what's right? To defend from aggressors? Or are we just as bad as the people handing us the gun for the conquest? MGS tells us that there is no right in killing, not ever, and that this is a competition, a meaningless arena of battlefields, where there are no winners or losers. That warfare of any kind has no benefit on mankind. It's all just meaningless arenas of competition. And that truly, is it really any different from the video games we play? Just nothing more than a game.
So it was artificial on my end too. It was just a game, not the real thing.
Oh, Jack.
I feel better knowing that.
Raiden, we don't carry guns to take people down. We're not here to help some politician either.
You can say that because you're a legend, a hero. I'm Jack the Ripper, a dirty reminder of a terrible mistake.
Legends don't mean a whole lot. I was just a name to exploit, just like you.
People will remember only the good part, the right part of what you did.
There's no right part in murder, not ever. And we're not in this to make a name for ourselves.
Then what are you and Otacon fighting for?
A future. You can stop being part of a mistake, starting now.
What am I? What am I supposed to do?
Whenever we realize it or not, all of us have undergone some form of image training, a kind of virtual conditioning. The FPS games we played growing up teaching us how to hold a gun, how it fires, how to reload, all without even ever touching a real firearm. Of course, this isn't universal, because some people have held real guns, myself included. And let me tell you, the experience of firing a real weapon is vastly different from what we see on screen. That said, studies have shown that video games improve reaction time, hand-eye coordination, and spatial awareness. Most of us have never fought in a war, never experienced the chaos of battle. But if we were thrown into one, we'd likely manage better than we would without this image training.
Shit! I'm hit! I'm hit!
I still remember the first FPS that left a mark on me. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. As a kid, it was my favourite, and later, when I was still young, I visited a British military recruitment booth that was actually based in town. These soldiers were stationed there, showing off the very weapons we had seen in the games. I even got told to hold one, an LMG, and it was heavy as hell. One of the soldiers smirked and said, "You've probably seen this gun in Call of Duty." But inside the booth was something even more interesting, a virtual reality simulation. A real standard issue rifle was connected to a digital arcade crosshair system with British standard issue weapon. It was me and another guy, but he was about 50 years my senior. Standing side by side, the difference, he had no military or gaming experience. The soldiers didn't brief us on the mission, there was no context, just one simple order: kill the terrorist, shoot to kill. Now bear in mind, this was during the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, the era when the Western world had been conditioned to see anyone of Arab origin as an inherent threat because what we was told by the media. I knew exactly what to do. The moment a 4x4 vehicle pulled up on the screen, I opened fire before the enemies even had chance to step out. And at the end of a simulation, the soldier handed us a results sheet, our accuracy, our kills. He laughed, saying I was the clear victor, even remarking that I had great reflexes and would make a fine soldier. As a kid, I remember feeling like some kind of legendary hero, just as Raiden describes in Metal Gear Solid 2. The adrenaline, the validation, it was intoxicating. But the older I got, the more I understood that the entire experience, it was a recruitment tactic. My targets were handed to me, and I never once questioned why I was shooting them in the first place. At the time, I wanted to join the army. I was ready to embrace that path, and it was Metal Gear that stopped me. This isn't to say that video games force people into the military, but they do train us mentally. They teach us how to think like a soldier, and when that training is paired with the right kind of messaging, the right kind of conditioning, it can be incredibly effective. That's the power of image training, and that's why it is so profound.
All of these children were orphans. They work in arms factories, and when they grow up, they want to join a PMC. They seek revenge on other companies, PMCs that killed their parents, and use their earnings to support their younger siblings. There are countless child soldiers like these in the PMCs. Nowadays, anyone with a computer can get combat training. The FPS games that these children love are distributed for free by these companies. Of course, it's all just virtual training. It's so easy for them to get absorbed by these war games. And before they know it, they're in the PMCs holding real guns. These kids end up fighting in proxy wars that have nothing to do with their own lives. They think it's cool to fight like this. They think that combat is life. They don't need a reason to fight. After all, for them, it's only a game.
We see countless times how Metal Gear Solid shows us what is detrimental to our well-being. Take the MGSV loading screen, for example, with its smoking and take a break messages, politely looking out for the audience without forcing them to do anything they don't want to. The same is showcased many times in a lot of MGS games, especially if our character is feeling unwell, or wishes to learn some information about something that they're not familiar with. The Codec call system is that perfect example. We talk to several pivotal characters in the game that gives us advice, whenever it's for survival purposes, general knowledge on the environment, misuses of smoking, or telling us to take better care of ourselves in the battlefield.
Snake, what makes you tense? Stressors, the factors that cause stress, can be divided into several types. They can be psychological, social, biological, chemical, or physical. In battlefield terms, that corresponds to the presence of enemies, the battlefield environment, biological and chemical weapons, and physical wounds and hunger caused by combat. Any of these factors can cause stress to build up. So you need to pay attention not only to your health, but also to your psyche, especially when engaged in combat.
For a series centrally based around war, it acknowledges itself as a video game. To us, the audience, especially.
Hold it, Snake. Time to change the disc. I know, it's a pain. But you need to swap disc 1 for disc 2. You see the disc labeled 2?
No.
Huh? Oh, wait! We're on PlayStation 3. It's a Blu-ray disc. Dual layered, too. No need to swap.
Damn it, Otacon! Get a grip!
Whilst it is just a video game, Metal Gear Solid does something truly unique. It makes the reality of warfare seem more like a reality, rather than some mindless fun shooting at some random players on a multiplayer online game. That our actions do have consequences, whether that be to the environment or to somebody personally. It's ironically anti-war, but its main context is war itself.
Counted as staff. So what, we're running a daycare now? To learn how to read and write. Do basic jobs.
Chance at a real life. Just not from behind a gun.
Being behind a gun's what we do, boss. There's no room for angels in our heaven.
A lot of the time, the player uses a tranquilizer gun and is often than not awarded more for a non-lethal approach and not being seen at all in battle, which is quite symbolic in many ways considering that you're keeping out of battle entirely. It's almost like that is the whole concept, is the fact that you're not supposed to be seen within battle because you was never in the battle in the first place. The enemy wasn't aware of your presence and couldn't be aware of your presence because you possibly didn't make it presented, depending on what approach that you went for. Whenever we go for non-lethal or lethal approaches, it's the will of the one person's decision to make. It's evidently clear that MGS doesn't reward undestructive approaches, but rather encourages us to handle our missions through remaining unseen from sight and avoiding combat.
You can't leave any traces of your presence. No weapons, equipment, footprints, sweat, or bodily waste. The same goes for bullets and cartridges, too. Your presence in enemy territory is already a violation of international conventions of warfare. There aren't supposed to be any American soldiers in Russia. It could spark an international incident. You can't let anyone see you. You can't let the enemy know you're there. This is a stealth mission.
As doing otherwise will affect our score. But really, in the real world, this doesn't mirror really MGS's concepts that gives us rewards for going non-lethal, which leans towards telling the player to avoid combat and fighting unless it's absolutely necessary for the survival of the world. But Metal Gear Solid is not biased. It acknowledges not everything can be perfect, and not everything can and will go to plan, that sometimes we cannot save everyone or remain completely undetected, and that sometimes in war, in games, it gets a little too real, when really you have no choice but to make decisions that are really heartbreaking.
You're gonna kill us!
Kill me, boss! Kill me!
Let's let the boss decide. We live and die by your order, boss. Boss!
In MGS2, when Raiden finally starts having his awakening during his time in Arsenal Gear, the desensitization wears off as he realizes the true nature of war. He even asks Snakes, has he ever enjoyed killing anyone? Which mirrors Liquid Snake's encounter with Snake. Speaking not just to him, but to us, the audience. We enjoyed all the killing, all the fun, and the thrill of battle.
So why are you here then? Why do you continue to follow your orders while your superiors betray you? Why did you come here? Well, I'll tell you then. You enjoy the killing. That's why. What? Are you denying it? Haven't you already killed most of my comrades?
That was...
I watched your face when you did it. It was filled with the joy of battle.
You're wrong.
There's a killer inside you. You don't have to deny it. We were created to be that way.
Created?
It was nothing but a game to us, but in reality, war is ugly. Like real war, there are no game overs, no retries. Once you're dead, it's truly over.
Jack, what's going on? Answer me! Jack! Jack!
Recruitment tools have been used throughout history, whenever through advertisements, video games, or even forcible conscriptions like in the World Wars.
Quick hits?
Yes, yes, brother! You are coming out tonight. Have an absolute belter. Just a quick drink for the road, my man.
Oh, this is mad, man. You feeling it? It's so good to see you.
Fast fashion?
What's up, my man? You already know what it is, and today we're busting some fresh heat. Take those dusty craps off your feet, man. Nah? Okay, this is the hottest drop of the year. Don't forget to subscribe.
Instant likes?
Come on, mate. Nearly there.
Lots of things can give you confidence for a little while. But confidence that lasts a lifetime? There's one place you'll find that.
Come to think of it, in Metal Gear Solid, Big Boss forcefully kidnaps soldiers for his own war machine to serve his agenda, and discards them like trash when they lack the ability to fight his war and replaces them with better ones. I'm not trying to say that video games impact people joining the military, however, there have been cases of this being true. Just as the music industry can influence people's minds, such as the clothes they wear or hairstyles, is the concept really that different from war? But Metal Gear Solid does showcase that sometimes there is a time for war, that people like Big Boss and his men are needed if madmen like Skullface could destroy the entire world with his will.
Skullface is keeping Sahelanthropus before setting it loose in Afghanistan. There's a good chance he's got nukes too.
Boss, we need to figure out what Skullface is up to. If you make contact with him, get him to talk. The ethnic cleansing parasites, Sahelanthropus. Find out what his plans are.
Just like when Adolf Hitler tried to dominate the world under his racist Nazi regime. Sometimes, maybe some people need to be taken out.
Who wanted it? Besides, some people just need killing.
That's patricide.
Yep.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The well-being of a large group should be prioritized over the needs of a small number of individuals, as showcased in Metal Gear Solid. Even if it means sacrificing some for the greater good.
Yes, of course. It all makes sense now. Do not let anyone showing symptoms get outside. As infection progresses, it triggers an overwhelming urge to get out in the open. That's the parasite controlling them. Once outside, the birds will feed on infected bodies, spreading the parasite on land.
Many articles discuss this theme, the moral and ethical nature of war and games as a recruitment process. For example, the US military is embedded in the gaming world, and its target is teen recruits. The article explains that in the late 1990s, the military was struggling to meet recruitment goals, prompting the army to release its own video game aimed at younger people. When a kid starts thinking about what he's going to do with his life, it's not at age 17, it's more like at the age 13, a colonel overseeing the project told Corey Mead. Author of Warplay Video Games and the Future of Armed Conflict, says you can't wait until they're 17 because by then they'll have decided they're going to college or trade school. The resulting game, American Army, was hugely successful. According to Mead, the relationship between the military and the games industry remains symbiotic, with the military loaning resources to game developers in exchange for insertion of pro-military narratives.
And send us what you do have. You've already commenced the plan.
A Sears program?
Yep. Same one old Georgie boy used on the kids in Liberia. Of course, it's wiped straight to the brain now. Feels as real as anything else. Your work is astonishing.
But that's the whole point, isn't it? It's just virtual reality, virtual fun. The decisions we make in video games, no matter the genre, are often destructive, ruthless, and if placed in a real-world context would lead to devastating consequences that could impact communities and civilizations and societies. Yet we make them without hesitation, without guilt, because the medium allows us to. This is where Kojima's brilliance shines, blurring fiction and reality so seamlessly that we're forced to confront the uncomfortable truth. Video games are an escape, a pastime, but Metal Gear reminds us the horrors we casually enact in pixels are the same horrors that we have shaped in real-world history. We pull the trigger without a second thought, but somewhere, someone has suffered or is suffering the very atrocities we so effortlessly commit in a video game. Life is a mysterious, beautiful and terrifying thing. It can bring compassion and joy just as easily as it can summon hatred and sorrow. War, in its many forms, has long been a cycle woven into the fabric of human history, an endless pattern we try and fail to break from each new generation. The world changes. Today's ally can become tomorrow's enemy. Time moves forward, yet so much remains the same, as things change with the times, as the boss explains. Some fight to protect their homeland, others enlist for a stable income, a way to feed their families, and then there are those who have never had a choice at all. A military path can build confidence, discipline, and skills that last a lifetime. But it is never as glamorous as it seems. War is destruction. It is sacrifice. It is the cold realization that the battlefield holds no heroes, only survivors. Wars have been fought to stop evil regimes, and many have been waged for nothing more than the greed of the ruling class. The same class that orders men and women to spill blood for their agendas, only to abandon them when they return home, broken, haunted by the things they were made to do.
We are members of Veterans for Peace, an ex-services organisation of men and women who have served this country in every conflict since the Second World War. We exist in the hope of convincing you that war is not the solution to the problems of the 21st century. We have come here today to hand back things given to us as soldiers that we no longer require or want.
This is my oath of allegiance. It's something I had to recite in order to get the job as a soldier. At 15 years old, I had little understanding of its true meaning. Now I fully understand the words. They have no meaning at all.
This is my oath of allegiance. This was a contract between the monarchy, the British government, and a 15-year-old child. I'm no longer loyal to the government or the monarchy.
There's something my best friend said to me once. What? We're not tools of the government or anyone else. Fighting was the only thing I was good at, but at least I always fought for what I believed in.
War is a double-edged sword. Sometimes we need brave souls to stand against true tyranny, to protect future generations from those who would see them erased. But on the other side of that blade lies devastation, Countless innocent lives, families torn apart, children caught in the crossfire of battles they never asked for. If war is a game, how will you play it? Virtually, from the safety of your screen? Or will you find yourself in the reality of battle, where survival is the only victory? Whatever choice you make is your own. But remember, war is never as thrilling, noble, or righteous as it appears when you are the one who's fighting to stay alive, or watching a friend being blown to pieces. I've been your host, The Voice Box, and if you've enjoyed this video, consider supporting the channel as it helps us reach a wider audience so that we continue this journey together. Thank you for watching, and until we meet again.
Building the future and keeping the past alive are one and the same thing.